is red, beneath the roof there is a bed, but not yet weary are our feet, still round the corner we may meet. A sodden tree or standing stone, that none have seen but we alone. Tree and flower and leaf and grass, let them pass, hill and water under sky, pass them by, pass them by.
Welcome to By-The-Bywater, a podcast on the Megaphonic Network. I'm Ned Raggett.
I'm Oriana Schwint.
I'm Jared Pekacek.
And we're here to talk about all things J.R.R. Tolkien, his work, his inspirations and impact, creative interpretations in other media, languages, lore, rip-offs, parodies, anything we think is interesting. Thanks for joining us. Hello and welcome to the 84th episode of By-The-Bywater. It is great to be back with you all, and let us salute Oriana, who is about to get a huge pile of snow dumped on her head, apparently,
I'm
or something.
So mad. I'm so upset. I used to be like really into snow, and I was even okay with the last dump that we had for like a few days, but then it just so this is unpleasant now. I feel like I made this happen by, in October or something of last year. It was warm and I was like, winter's over. We're never going to have another winter. It's never going to snow here again. So I apologize to everyone in the New York metro area.
Now you know who to blame.
Yep.
Yeah. The tri-state area got it hard just because Oriana made one simple wish. It's a terrible thing.
Yep.
So anyway, well, get through that. In the meantime, Jared's adventures going through Lord of the Rings again continue to be appreciated by us. Although I don't entirely thank you for reminding me that, yes, Tolkien actually did come up with the term the wet wang. I mean, why? Hi.
It's so funny.
That's got to be on some kind of RuPaul's Drag Race. Surely someone will use that at some point.
Yeah, and I know I made this joke in the post, but it's pretty rich that's coming from somebody whose quenya name is Teleporno. So,
no wonder the purse was set aside and put away. It's like, get back over there. So, on that note, we hope you're all doing well. So, we will just go ahead and plunge right into it. There's sort of news, although there is one delightful element. So, but we'll get to that. We'll go through the vegetables first before we get to dessert. So, Jared, please, as always, take it away.
There's bits and pieces this month, not all of it good, or at least not all of it pleasing. But first, while Ian McKellen's Shakespearean recitation on Stephen Colbert the other week, got deserved attention, there was a bit of news from him in that filming for The Hunt for Gollum is supposed to start in New Zealand in July. There's various other pointless rumors flying around, which we will treat as just that until we hear otherwise. Meantime, Palantir keeps being in the news for all the wrong reasons, and once again, we refer you to our Silicon Valley episode. But besides finding out that one of the chief goofs working there tried to persuade some increasingly restless workers by being committed hobbits for all their DHS and related shenanigans, learning that they're providing nicotine patches for said workers to improve efficiency is not exactly the kind of tobacco love that Tolkien himself would have enjoyed. But in the midst of all the idiocy, a delight at the Winter Olympics, a friendly dog joined some cross-country skiers at the conclusion of race, and besides being a very good boy in general, it turned out that the Czechoslovakian wolf dog in question was named Nazgul. Per an interview with his owners Enrico and Alice Varesco, who live near the venue, Enrico chose the name because he wanted something powerful and scary, though Alice says he's not dangerous, just stubborn and wanting to win, which arguably he did.
Completely.
He certainly won my heart.
All of our hearts. I think that was a classic. Everybody across the internet was like, dog at the Olympics. And I'm like, what? And then when the news of the name came out, it's like, perfect, done, genius. This dog is the winner. More so than any of the, even that Norwegian guy who won 6 gold medals or whatever, and things like that. It's like, it's all about the dog. Alicia Liu, maybe, but up there in the same thing. But,
Yeah.
We must make our allowances, but a lovely little moment and a great detail. As for the Palantir news, why? Yeah, obviously, we need not dwell on it. It's just going to get worse and worse.
I know that Alex Karp does not listen to this podcast, but I would like to speak directly to Alex Karp if he ever does decide to listen to any episodes of By-The-Bywater. He is the co-founder and CEO of Palantir, and I would just like to say, Alex, you are Saruman. It's not a good thing to be, and Tolkien himself is, if there is an afterlife, he is screaming at you from beyond the grave. And if he were alive today, would probably be having to go to confession daily because he hates your guts so much and believes you to be an irredeemable orc, which is not something you're really supposed to do as a Catholic. So,
Tolkien is waiting in the afterlife with a baseball bat with nails stuck in it. But fortunately, they're not ending up in the same place.
Yeah.
Oh boy, got some eschatological visions all going through my head.
We gotta
here.
start doing the thing where we people clip the podcast and spread it around on social media.
No,
I feel like Alex Karp is one of those people who's like, well, Saruman's biggest problem was really just that he didn't plan well enough.
Yeah.
Like, everything he was doing was actually fine.
Yeah.
He just didn't take the ends into account or whatever. Like, no, that's not the point of the story. No. Industrialization is not anyway.
You can tell a good story, but sometimes people won't actually read it. In this case, probably literally. Oh, dear. Well, on that cheery note. Anyway, and as for the Hunt for Gollum stuff, the rumors I've seen flying around, people want to say like almost the entire cast of the original movies are coming back. It's like, let it go.
Please. They're all so old now.
Ian McKellen, you can hide under makeup. That's the whole point.
He's supposed to be old.
They'll like de-age him, though, I'm sure.
Ugh.
They'll like digitally de-age him. I'm almost certain that's what they'll do.
Cast new people. Like, why do we have to do this digital necromancy on everything? And I know, like, they're not dead, but like they're lost youth or whatever. Come on.
Yeah. Right. Like, my problem with the Gandalf of the Rings of Power show is not that it's a different actor. I like that actor.
That it sucks.
Yeah, it's like Gandalf isn't supposed to be there. That's my problem with it. Like, the actor's cool. I have no beef with that at all.
Yeah. The times we're in, so oh well. Good actors, not a good thing. It happens.
They deserve so much better than what they're getting.
Yeah.
Right.
Although, happy for them to be getting paid. It seems like there's a lot of jobs on that show, so that's nice.
This is
the only good thing about it is it's paying people.
It's employing them. Yeah, there we go.
Like, I love to see Kate Hawley getting work, Come on. Like,
yeah. It's all true. All right. Well, we do have a main topic. Jared was the one who came up with this one, and we've been having thoughts these past.
Sure did.
We've been having thoughts these past few weeks. We were bound to do this one eventually. Well, Jared, here we go. The floor is yours.
So in a letter to Milton Waldman, Tolkien makes this famous statement about, like, had a mind to make a body of more or less connected legend, which I could dedicate simply to England, my country, and all that. And then at the end of all this, this is where the mythology for Britain stuff comes from, by the way, which kind of gets overblown as a, mission statement, but whatever. He goes, the cycles, like all these tales, should be linked to a majestic whole and yet leave scope for other minds and hands wielding paint and music and drama. That part gets excerpted all the time. What everybody leaves out is that after he says all that, he just puts in one word. He just says, absurd. Just leave that standing for a second. So
let that sink in.
Let that sink in. But to the topic at hand, Donald Swann is not someone whose work I was familiar with. I still am not, honestly. But apparently he is well-known or moderately well-known for being one half of the musical duo Flanders and Swann. According to his own introduction to the first edition of The Road Goes Ever On, which is our topic today, he and his wife would read Lord of the Rings every year, and during an international tour, she essentially suggested it might keep her from boredom to set some of the book's poems to music. The first one ended up being written in Ramallah on the way home to England, actually. He comments that he started it in the Middle East and finished it in the Middle West, I think in Wisconsin. I have never been that productive on a trip. So Swann came to know the Tolkiens, played the music for them. Tolkien himself approved of them all, except for Swann's setting for the poem Namarie. Apparently for that, he had something quite different in mind, and the Gregorian-style chant that he sang for Swann became the version in the book itself. So what does this song cycle consist of? Depending on the edition or the recording, there are between like 7 and 10 songs. There's the eponymous The Road Goes Ever On, which we all know, I'm sure, from the Jackson movies, the text from the Jackson movies. Here, it's kind of a jaunty tune, and I'm sure we can put a sample or two in here along the way.
The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can.
I'm just going to go through the songs really quickly. And the next is Upon the Hearth the Fire is Red, which is sung, it's the song that is sung while Frodo, Merry, and Pippin head toward Buckland. One might also describe this as jaunty, which will be a theme here. And all of these songs are meant to be played without break for applause. Like you stop for a second and you go to the next one because they are meant to feed into each other. So after Upon the Hearth the Fire is Red is In the Willow Meads of Tessarinen, which is what one of the things Treebeard chants to Merry and Pippin and Fangorn, followed by In Western Lands, which Sam sings in despair in the Tower of Cirith Ungol, and which Frodo replies to, and that's how they find each other. How cute. Then is Namarie, which is Galadriel's lament in Quenya that the Fellowship hears as they leave Lothlorien, which is not in the movies, and I think that's a huge missed opportunity. They don't have to have her singing it, just have it in there somewhere. It's beautiful. But enough editorializing. Yeah, right. I'm not going to stop editorializing. Are you kidding me?
No.
Never.
After that is I Sit Beside the Fire, which is what Bilbo sings in Rivendell before the Fellowship sets off, also not in the movies. Errantry, which is actually from the Adventures of Tom Bombadil, but I think Swann just wanted something sort of like fun to finish it off. Here, I've heard that Errantry is supposed to like link back up with the first song in the cycle, so it's kind of like literally a cycle. I don't hear it myself when I listen to it, but that's maybe on me. Later editions have Elbereth Gilthoniel, which can be recorded separately, but is also embedded in I Sit Beside the Fire. This is sung in Rivendell after the feast to celebrate Frodo's awakening. It's the text in Sindarin. And then Bilbo's last song, this is not in any of the books. I actually love this. This is a poem that Tolkien left to his secretary, Margaret Joy Hill, along with the copyright. He was thinking of her. That's very sweet. And then the last song, again, this is on the first recording that has Tolkien on it doesn't have these last two. This last one is Luthien Tinuviel, which Beren sings in the Silmarillion. Now, having gone through all that, there's a subtle but maybe important or maybe not important distinction to make. The Road Goes Ever On, which is the thing that I said I wanted to talk about, refers to the published book, which contains essays and calligraphy by Tolkien himself, where he talks in some detail about the poetry and languages of Middle-earth. This is the most detail, I think, that really existed before his death about poetry and languages. Poems and Songs of Middle-earth is the name of the actual album, which has him reciting poems in addition to Swann recording the songs with himself on the piano and William Elvin singing. I thought they were the same thing, so I'm going to treat them as the same thing, this recording and the book, because I don't want to keep specifying what's what, but it is worth noting, they are different. And so I've listened to multiple performances of this cycle now, and it amazed me every time, I gotta say, how much I was hoping this would be the performance that made me like it. Never happened. I'm not prepared to say this is because the cycle is bad. Let's say maybe not without merit. Ironically, the one that works the best for me is the one Swann himself had nothing to do with, which is Namarie, the one with the melody by Tolkien. Second would be Bilbo's last song, which wasn't included in the original and was never heard or approved by Tolkien. To me, most of this doesn't work because it doesn't sound like something you'd actually hear in Middle-earth. I also have a hard time with listening to just a piano and a voice, but that's a me problem. That is
not a you problem.
That is, well, I mean, it's not universal. It's not like a standard of music, like everybody should be doing more than this. That's what I mean. I don't mean it's only me. I know it's not only me. This music sounds like something you would write if you were in a musical duo called Flanders and Swann. Like, I don't think Treebeard would chant, heavy air quotes like that. I don't think In Western Lands should be as like art songy as it is. I kind of also don't think The Road Goes Ever On should be that jaunty, because it's pretty freaking jaunty. and jauntiness is not something I am into as a person. So for me, I will say also part of the problem is that many available recordings are by a highly trained classical singer in the Western tradition, something that none of the characters who sing these songs are in the book, with the maybe exception of Galadriel, depending on how you interpret things. But I kind of don't know if Elvish singing should sound like this or like Cocteau Twins. So it's extremely hard also to think of any of the songs as, say, like walking songs when the recordings are the sort of thing that you can only sing if you're standing very still with exquisite breath control by a piano. And there are less classical recordings out there, I will say, but Swann's own with the singer William Elvin is definitely not one of them. But is that a problem? Is anyone setting these texts to music obligated to do it in a way that makes sense for the world of Middle-earth? Am I going to criticize Verdi for writing Aida without authentic ancient Egyptian instruments and voices? I'm not, but I think that would rule. I think it's perfectly valid to write music that isn't, like, heaviest air quotes possible, like authentic to Middle-earth, because I cannot stress this enough. Middle-earth isn't real.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you heard it here first. This is actually fantasy. None of this exists. Having said all that, like, even after all that, I don't like this music. I just don't. I wanted to. I went into it open, generous heart, open mind, ready to be, like, wooed and convinced. And I super was not. So I'll sort of conclude there. I'm sure our resident music critic has a lot to say, but I want to lob a softball question out there really fast. Favorite song? And if you don't have one, why?
All right. Well, Oriana, you want to go first?
I
don't have a favorite song. I hated this more than I think I've hated anything in quite some time. And I saw some, like, I hated it more than I hated Begonia and the Bruce Springsteen biopic. So,
high bar.
pretty intense. Yeah, just absolutely none of it worked for me. Even Jared, the Namarie by the Royal Gondor Orchestra.
Le Royal Gondor Orchestra. Yes, orchestra.
You know, there's a YouTube video that we will surely link to in the show notes.
The only performance I came close to liking, and even that was like, I love the Namarie, which it sounds like you're maybe not.
No. It was definitely like better, and I could actually have seen that like kind of playing in the Jackson movies. Like during, you know, the scene that they cut of her giving them the gifts or whatever. But that was like the closest to anything working. Or actually, like, I liked the instrumentation of the arrangement they did there, the instruments that they used. But yeah, oh my God, I thought you played a prank. Like, I thought, like, Ned uploaded the album for us to be able to listen to, because it's kind of hard.
It's very hard to find the original.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and just for research purposes, it's fine. It's fair use. I don't know.
It's just for us. It's just for us. I got to the music and was like, is this a joke? Like, this is just like some, like, it felt like I was in a piano hall on the Bowery in like 1918. And I was like, that's not what I'm supposed to be feeling right now, I don't think. So yeah.
Actually, I didn't think it was a joke when I got to the music, but I was like, is this a demo? This can't be the real thing.
Surely they didn't put this out.
Yeah, but no, it is.
It really, really is. Well, as for me, I will say that the one song from the original recording that stuck with me for whatever reason, shards of music sit in my head for the longest time. Yes, I am the resident music critic, my other life.
Yes.
But the build up to the concluding part of each verse of Upon the Hearth of Fire is Red, for some reason that part always stuck with me. I don't know why. But it was the thing that, to give a little context about this thing to begin with. So we've been talking about it as if I don't want to say as if everyone knows about it, but let's give a little more context here about Flanders and Swann, especially Swann, and what's going on.
Please, because I did not have time to do research into them. I was looking solely at this.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. So the way to think about Flanders and Swann as a duo is they were, a comic song duo. They were your classic Oxford-educated comic song duos, you could say, of an age. They I believe, were in Oxford late 30s, I believe, late 30s, early 40s. And the whole story is they sort of, after the war, which they did separate things, they reconnected. They realized they had, they liked their musical talents. Swann was the pianist. Flanders was the singer. Notably, he was also someone who was in the days when people actually, took diseases seriously. He was unfortunately stricken by polio before vaccines came in, and performed openly in a wheelchair after that. And I say openly because he apparently was an early campaigner for, you could say, disability visibility and rights and things like this, about, questions of access and all the rest of it. So good on him. Did not hide that away. And so the two of them ended up recording a number of songs together, creating a comic review, fitting in with a very particular tradition in English popular entertainment. Light entertainment, I think, is the better way to put it.
Very light.
And it fits in with the world if you want a little bit of broader context. And this is me speaking at a remove several times over. But it was as much the case in America, where they were actually a fairly notable hit at the time, too, as well as in the UK, where you could say the success of rock and roll and a lot of came along with it sort of skewed away the idea of what popular music was for a lot of things towards that being the center and towards where we are now. Whereas you could say 40s, 50s, 60s, you're talking about a thing where there were a lot more rooms for, novelty and comic songs and things that were not one exact sort of thing. You were not just necessarily a singer. You were an entertainer. You were doing things. These could be part of reviews, etc. It's not that this has died out by any means, but it's sort of been shunted and limited to a sort of like, it's in the theatrical side of things, as opposed to the mass consciousness, you could say, depending on what makes it through. I'm sort of beating this point over the head, and I don't want to get too lost in the weeds, but the point is that's the context in which they thrived and which they succeeded, and they, to the point where they had Broadway reviews. I mean, you don't get there without without some sort of attention to what's going on.
Yeah, they were hugely popular, comparatively, I guess they were.
They were big.
That's the one thing I did learn about them, really, was that they were super popular enough to tour the U.S.
Yeah.
Which
tour
is,
the U.S.
I mean, good for them.
Yeah. Impressive.
Yeah.
The hippopotamus was no ignoramus, and sang her this sweet serenade. Mud, mud, glorious mud, nothing quite like it for cooling the blood. So follow me, follow, down to the hollow, and there let us wallow in glorious mud.
And when you hear the songs we hear with Flanders singing, again, they embrace their goofy things. They're not trying to adapt Tolkien, dare I say. It's more the type of humor you can see fitting in with essentially the proto Monty Python humor of things like Beyond the Fringe, which is where Peter Cook and Dudley Moore came up in, among others, and the Goon Show to a degree, stuff like that. When you hear it in these contexts, it makes a lot more sense. Think of something like when Fry and Laurie were doing things with Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie with their own show in much later years, where you have Hugh Laurie on piano and Stephen Fry sometimes doing bizarre cocktail recipes and things like this. In a weird way, that's a descendant of kind of what's going on here to a degree. Blah, da, 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 da. And as Jared pointed out, we have the whole context in how Swann himself, who was not just working with Flanders, he did work with a variety, a number of people, but there was a very famous partnership, sort of got into it and went into it from there. And with all that said as background and with all that what's going on here, the thing I was trying to sort of frame when I was re-listening this for the first time in decades, because I heard about this in the mid to late 80s when I'm really getting into Tolkien, and I'm like, what's this Road Goes Ever on songbook, and who is Donald Swann? Thankfully, I guess, they had come out with a Cadman Records, who famously were kind of like, the Audible of their day. I guess they're still around in terms of recording authors reading their own work. I mean, massively so. They were the label for that, at least in America. And many, many records that I listened to when I was a younger reader, with lots of samples of people doing things. Tolkien's first appearance on a Cadman record, or any of Tolkien, counting his son Christopher, of course, who did a couple of them as well, was this release, which at the time was seen to be a bit of a surprise because Tolkien was not quite seen as the the literary, highbrow literary stuff, you want to call it, that sort of thing. It's sort of like, what's this random thing here, fantasy, and all that. So this was sort of seen as a bit of a surprise. However, it was also undoubtedly popular. So hey, your market, blah blah blah. The Cadman had put out a package deal of 4 vinyl records. 5? Might have been 5, actually, of all their recordings into a box set, a vinyl box set, that was released in the late 70s, I think, initially. And I got a copy of it at a certain point in the mid-to-late 80s. And that had things like the home recordings that Tolkien did before the publication of Lord of the Rings, where he was reading snippets from the still unpublished manuscript, which, again, were done on a home recording that a friend had a machine set up. It had the Christopher Tolkien later recordings from the Silmarillion, et cetera, and it had the Poems and Songs of Middle-earth thing, along with around the same time when I got the book. So you put that all together, I'm listening to it, and I'm going like, oh, okay, great, let's see what it is. And I'm like, this isn't what I necessarily imagined, let's put it that way. Because I was trying to take in, and this maybe is the other thing too, I'm trying to take in the spoken word that you read, the words you're reading. You're reading these poems, and you read them in your head however you read them, as you read them. If you're not, dare I say, sometimes skipping over them a bit, and as one might do. And it's just one of those things like it didn't quite work. It didn't quite sync. It's very sort of thing. I deeply doubt that anybody, with the exception maybe of Nemarier, came in thinking that reading the poems originally and would have thought to make them sound like the way that Donald Swann made them. It's like I refuse this. I doubt this. The deep doubts is the best way I can put it. And what I'd like to maybe sort of turn away from me just going blah all this time and something, throw this out there is, okay, what does this symbolize more than anything else? Mm-hmm. Because this is arguably one of only 2, count them 2, collaborations that Tolkien felt comfortable with during his lifetime to put his name on it and basically accept it. So like, okay, legit. The other one, in terms of any sort of collaboration, being Pauline Baynes, who, even though he sometimes, there were a couple things he wasn't totally sure sometimes as how some of the art would have worked in some of the higher drama, you could say, of some of Middle-earth, nonetheless, absolutely appreciated what she did, worked with her constantly over time on any number of publications, starting with Farmer Giles all the way up through Smith & Wooten Major and other things along the way, including a famous Middle-earth poster map. And the fact that he got along with her and sort of like, okay, yeah, we got this. Swann seems to have done that as well, and nobody else. Now, it's not to say that there wasn't a case where he was looking for collaborators, let's say. I don't get that sense it was ever him. But the fact that that someone who had basically worked on this thing for decades, one way or another, and towards the end of his life, now that's getting some wider attention, it's like, okay, I'll, even despite, as Jared pointed out in the intro, the dream that other people would be involved with it, when it came down to brass tacks, there were only 2. Who knows what else he was approached with? Who also know the crazy ideas his publishers were fending off and beating away with bats, with people going like, I've written a whole epic whatever in response to this, and let's not send that to the professor, type thing. It was just this. And the Pauline Baynes thing was my chance. And Swann was somebody who was already well known in a certain context. They wouldn't have just simply, thrown it aside slush man. It's like, oh, okay, here's somebody who we've heard of, type thing. So it's interesting seeing it and sensing it function along those lines.
Yeah. Absolutely. One of the things that fascinates me so much about this is the extent to which he approved of it and was involved in it. Like he did. I do want to talk about the book as an object.
Yeah.
For a bit, because he did so much calligraphy for it. There's so much Tengwar in here. He wrote all these notes on the poems, specifically, I think more the Elvish ones, and talks about the diction in Nemarier is more poetic. This is not the same as the spoken language.
Yeah.
Talking about matters of grammar and stuff like that. He clearly was super into this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so odd to me because, again, it doesn't sound like what you would think he would want it to sound like. I don't know if that was a grammatically complete sentence, but you know what I mean.
Right.
It's like it does sound kind of like in the tradition of like light entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how he saw the books. So what is that? Like, what's happening there? What is that? I think that's unanswerable, but like...
I do wonder the extent to which, like, Edith was a pianist, and that was in somewhere in that intro where Swann, I think, is talking about how, like, they were so pleased that, I was worried that they wouldn't really be into the piano because, it isn't found in Middle-earth. Like, it's not an instrument in there. So, of course, there would be an objection. But there wasn't, and that was great. And Edith really loved it, and Tolkien really loved it because Edith, and it's like, it is really interesting to be like, oh, you can create this whole, world and be so talented in a variety of ways, and then have these bizarre blind spots. That's encouraging. But yeah, I don't know if like there was just kind of a bias of like, oh, piano, my wife who never got to be a concert pianist really loves this, and I love her, and also when she plays the piano, and so that's such conjecture, that's such armchair psychology, so I don't want anyone to think that like that's actually what was happening. It's just a hypothesis. I don't know. Because it doesn't make any sense.
It does, like, there, wow, there's so many beginnings to the sentence. In a way, it does make sense to me because of how small it is, if that makes sense. Like, I think the fact that it is just kind of like this light little, dinky little thing maybe made him more interested in it, more accepting of it than if somebody had been like, here, I wrote this symphony. It's all orchestrated. There's then it starts to feel maybe like somebody is imposing a vision upon it. Whereas this is coming from like a place of humility on behalf of the composer. I keep thinking of the letter or two, maybe I don't remember the number, where he's essentially critiquing, giving notes on this screenplay, and he keeps getting so mad at the screenwriter for having a different vision in some ways, which is not totally fair when it comes to adaptation, but having an interpretation that is incorrect based on facts that only he knew, which is a whole other thing. Not really coming from humility, but coming from like, well, I know what this must be. I know better.
Or I know better
think
that the Eagles I think this should be this way. Like
Whereas Donald Swann being like, I wrote some tunes. Do you like them? And Tolkien being like, yeah, I mean, sure. Like this feels like, and not that I want to imply that he had like a giant ego here, because I don't really think he was that kind of person. But the spirit of collaboration that it was being approached in may have made him more kindly. Again, armchair psychology. Totally. Yeah. I was hoping there'd be more in the letters about this. There's like one letter where it's mentioned, and he's just kind of like, oh yeah, I got to do this calligraphy or something like that. It's not a big deal. I thought there'd be so much more. I thought it'd be like multiple.
There are, but the thing is, I was reminded of this the other week, is that for whatever reason, when the letters were pulled together for publication, including the newer edition, the letters that he did exchange with Swann were not included. They were held onto them, and in fact, they've been offered up for sale. We mentioned this as a news item, I think at some point last year.
I had forgotten about that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I did mean in the published one. I didn't mean like it didn't exist. But
there would be. It'd be interesting if we ever get them, not necessarily, if they're going to be a third edition of letters, I very much doubt that, but if we ever got like some sort of accounting of what was in them and all that, we may find that there's a little more in there beyond what was initially reported. I don't know. I forget how many letters there were. A lot of it seems to have been, of course, just direct communication, in meetings and things like that. So who can say? He mentions various separate meanings. He mentions about how at one point he was able to introduce Tolkien to Flanders backstage at a performance they did at Oxford. And something that crossed my mind is that apparently everyone got along because everyone was from Oxford, and so there is that too. Don't deny. Let's not deny the fact that sort of like, when you have it in that way, of course everyone's going to get along. Let's see. So I was talking about that sort of thing. Something maybe to throw out there too, but to go back to your point, Jared. Yeah, I think the fact that this wasn't just simply Tolkien approved and then added a note to it. I think the art is really remarkable. I agree. This is not something. This is not your typical sheet music where you open up and it's just the sheet music. I know. We got sort of some copies of it with sort of black and white scan, but at least in the second edition, it's kind of really remarkable how it's sort of like a gray-green combination where the diacritic marks are in this very elegant green, it must be said, against the sort of like, gray-black of the main lettering in the Tengwar. But there's also various little sort of like, end designs at the end where there's space to fill up white space when there's not enough on the page. And in some cases, he's created these extra designs and things like that. I think Jared is currently digging up copies to show, to show in the camera thing, which you folks can't hear, but
you can find images of it online. I think. But so my library happened to have a first printing. So this is like the original. So it's this big kind of tan book with the Tengwar text of Namarie on the top. Like the title is, in big, and then the full poem of Namarie is on the front with like red ink and comments and stuff in other languages. And on the back is the text of Elbereth Gilthoniel in Tengwar, but in a different mode. So it's the one that's got the vowels written out as letters rather than the diacritics. So he was thinking about this. This is not part of anybody else's copy, obviously, but to Jana from Auntie Jen, 1967.
Oh, so my God.
Somebody was a fan. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it was really nice.
But it's also like it's a beautifully designed book. Almost every page has like Tengwar going across the top and bottom in sort of dark gray and red ink. It's really, really beautiful. The paper is great. I'm sorry for any like paper noises in the microphone. But yeah, all these ornaments that Tolkien drew. What else is in here? It's just really beautifully designed. And then there's all these essays. Maybe I skipped them. They're here somewhere that are talking about like, I thought this was really interesting. There's a bit about like, well, here's how Varda is usually portrayed. Right. Or like she's standing on the mountain with her hands spread out or something like that. Which is like, I didn't think there was much more I had to learn in some ways about how he envisaged things, but it turns out he was thinking about everything. Yeah. It never occurred to me that he might have thought about how Varda is depicted. But of course he did. Of course he did.
I've got a couple of the key paragraphs right here, and yeah, again, for folks to really drill down on this. Again, this is before the Silmarillion is published. Obviously, he's still alive, and all anyone knows is The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. That's essentially all they know, unless you've been lucky enough to be a letter writer. So this is very much, sort of like you get, it's a very interesting bonus. It's one of those things like a songbook, why do you do it? But if you have an interest in this, not only is he actually going in deep on the language side of things, this is some of the most intense stuff he presented on the language and how it develops and the elements and things like that. You get there. I mean, he's breaking it down to vowel sounds and things like this. He's going deep. But the specific thing that Jared was just referring to, again, there's sort of larger notes here talking about it says, as a divine in quotes or angelic in quotes person, Varda / Elbereth could be said to be, quote, looking afar from heaven, end quote, as in Sam's invocation, hence the use of a present participle. Of course, you bring her back to language. Yeah. She was often thought of or depicted as standing on a great height, looking towards Middle Earth, with eyes that penetrated the shadows and listening to the cries for aid of elves and men in peril or grief. Frodo and Sam both invoke her in moments of extreme peril. The elves sing hymns to her, and then he adds in an amazing parenthetical, which frankly was earned, these and other references to religion in The Lord of the Rings are frequently overlooked. And he's got a point. I mean, it is the question, where's the religion in Lord of the Rings? It's sort of like, well, you know, it is there, just not there in the way you think it's there, so, or assume it to be there. So it's interesting.
I think maybe if you're not Catholic, it doesn't read that way. But I'm assuming if you're Catholic, you're like, oh yeah, this is like when you pray to Saint Anthony to find a lost purse with pounds in it. If you're traveling to the Irish Free State with your family and
or if you like. I mean, I the description of her on the Great Island and things like this, it just makes me think the idea of Mary, Star of the Sea. I mean, that's a very, very specific connection and imagery with that. But yeah, no, it's but it is remarkable that's in there. Yeah, so he went hard, as you said, in terms of like, bring this in there. It is something that is not, if you wanted to compare it to something we talked about last year, which was the Atlas of Middle Earth, that essentially was fan work. However much was drawing on what was there. This is not fan work. This is a much different kind of thing, even if it's a much different sort of detail and the way it's being presented.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't know how much there is to talk about here, or maybe I shouldn't preface it with that, maybe there's so much, but I was finding myself wondering, like, how obligated are we to, like, take it seriously or whatever because he was involved and appreciated it? I mean, more specifically, like, the music itself, not so much the essays, because obviously those are incredibly valuable. But do we have to really pay attention to it? Is it how important is it if he was this involved again with the music? I always feel guilty for not liking it more, which is insane. I don't know why I feel that way, but
it's bad and they should feel bad. I don't know.
Well,
and I'm not gonna feel bad because it's, I'm not gonna listen to this again. I'm going to fantasize about other musicians working with this material.
Yeah.
I have a few ideas.
I think we all can name a few. I mean, I'm not going to go to bat for this. Don't worry. And all that. Again, this is not really what I am looking for musically as well. I mean, I don't know. The closest thing to something like this would be, this was recorded around the same time that Elton John was starting to get it together. I'd rather listen to Elton John on piano singing than this is right here. And this is the thing. It is interesting that even though Swann himself could sing them, and in fact, one of the things I'll get to this is that the one bit of evidence that shows him at the time in a broader popular context performing something from this, and it's an interesting clip. The more I studied it, was that it's part of a larger thing. Basically, when Flanders and Swann wrapped up their partnership in the late '60s, around the time that the work on this had already been done, it all sort of bled over together. And again, Swann was never just concentrating on that; he was doing many other things. They did the second of their major reviews, which was, the first one was At the Drop of a Hat, and the second major review was called At the Another Drop of a Hat, I think, or something, or The Drop of Another Hat, something like that. And again, it was popular enough over here that they had the Broadway stand, and then after it closed, they did a live in studio with audience performance of it for a local CBS station. CBS, not PBS, because PBS wasn't quite there at the time. So that's remarkable in its own right. Tape was preserved and has since come across. The BBC eventually, it was broadcast in '67, mind you, then was preserved over, BBC got it, or ITV or somebody, and uploaded on YouTube. Anyway, so there's a clip of Swann. Basically, the idea is that during the performance, Flanders has gone off stage, just sort of relax or whatever, and Swann has a brief solo bit. He may have done other things. The clip shows him in his formal tux attire and all that. He basically says, and now we'll talk about, he spends about a little minute basically setting up what this is, Hobbits, Lord of the Rings, and then he's created this song. So clearly at this point he must have had Tolkien's approval, even if necessarily the album hadn't quite come out yet. I'm not sure.
And one of these hobbits is Bilbo. Now, Bilbo is a poet who's had many adventures, and in this poem he's sitting beside the fire reminiscing in his extreme old age. Towards the end he hears comforting voices speaking to him in this old, mysterious language. I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and dragonflies in summers that have been.
and he does the combination of Sit Beside the Fire and Elbereth Gathoniel all put together. And what's interesting too is you see the camera swing around from one side to the other, and then looking out, and you see the audience all there sitting there. It's sort of like, oh, okay, it's a 1967 mainstream American TV audience. And what's interesting is that while you can tell there's a bit of sort of hesitation, like, well, I'm explaining this about Tolkien, and everyone's like, there's a little bit of like almost nervous laughter from the audience, like, okay, what are we getting here? But beyond that, it basically is treated with seriousness is the best way to do it. His performance is earnest, and the crowd is not like restless or anything going like, or just, laughing inappropriately or appropriately, I don't know. But it's interesting to get this little sort of moment of tension where Tolkien was, known to a degree, but clearly not now. And you're trying to think, okay, mainstream, if New York audience TV, so you're trying to piece all this together. So it's an interesting little snippet. And again, I try and judge that performance and that choice of doing it in that context. And it's really interesting. It is not the way I think of Tolkien. Nonetheless, it's a translation of Tolkien in a particular milieu, in a particular style that I don't associate with him when I read him. I never felt that way. Within a couple of years, you have within 2 or 3 years later, you've got Led Zeppelin dropping in Tolkien references in their music, rather different from Donald Swann, even if English. And then you've got the folkies are going to come in too. It's sort of like the things that we tend to hear in terms of popular music, and then eventually more classical adaptations, things like this. But instead, it's this. It's very unexpected. It's the type of thing that if you told me it was a clip from an Ed Sullivan show, I'd be like, sure, because that seems like what it might have been.
And I wonder, there must be people old enough to have been there who were talking about this, but I do wonder how it played to an audience member hearing this and being like, oh, I think I've heard of that book. Or maybe they heard it or had read the book and were like, that's not my... That would... how do you react to that if you're in 1967 hearing this for the first time? I do think one of the things that makes this not work for me, because I was, as you were talking, I was listening, I promise. I was also thinking about unexpected other musical things, being like heavy mithril or whatever, and how that innately makes more sense to me. Why does that make more sense to me? And I think it's because the thing that is missing from most of these is a sense of awe, which is maybe a weird term to use for heavy metal. But
your point is taken.
There's nothing big here. And I know these are little songs sung, a lot of quiet moments, but there's nothing that... There's a German term like Heimweh or something like that. I'm pronouncing... Don't yell at me. I don't know German. Which is throughout Lord of the Rings, that sense of homesickness or yearning or whatever. So even if The Road Goes Ever On can be jaunty and fun, that's fine. But something like In Western Lands Beneath the Sun should be yearning. Something is... There should be... You're missing something. And that sense of there not being more depth to it is a huge reason why I don't like it. And why I think Nemarie and Bilbo's song work the best for me, because they kind of capture that in very different ways, sense of history or depth or yearning that the rest of it just doesn't have.
I'll throw in that it's interesting on a contrast level that arguably better versions of these songs with their own particular instrumentation, or I should say arrangement, vocal arrangement, although in some cases musical, could be found in the 81 BBC radio Lord of the Rings. Again, Stephen Oliver did the music for that one, where you hear the hobbits do Upon the Hearth of Fire is Red as a sturdy walking song, and all singing together roughly, not meant to be any sort of pure delivery.
Well then, we're off at last.
Well, haven't you got a song for the occasion?
Well, yes, there's one that might suit. Up on the Hearth?
Yes.
Upon the hearth, the fire is red. Beneath the roof, there is a bed. But not yet weary are our feet. Still round the corner we may meet.
And where you have Bill Nye as Sam delivering, in Western lands, and the sense of lonely desperation reaching.
Well, if I can't find him, maybe I can make him know I'm here. In western lands beneath the sun, the flowers may rise in spring. The trees may bud, the waters run. the merry finches sing.
They don't follow the Swann arrangements. I doubt they ever would have, but you hear it sort of like, okay, this is where it connects. This is how to make that work. So there's that there too. Keeping an eye on the time, we should perhaps start thinking about wrapping up. So I'll just throw in a couple of things here. And we mentioned a few things. We mentioned part of this already. But the thing I found when I was just doing some scrounging to see what else was out there was the surprising fact that there has been a mini revival of interest in the Swann cycle in recent times. You can find various covers of it, people doing it in things like piano recitals and things like that, or a song or two on there on YouTube and all that. But the two most notable ones, we mentioned this earlier, Le Royal Gondor Orchestre from Christopher Dills, I think it was Christophe Dills, I think was the fellow's name, working on the France Musique channel, which is apparently the music-focused thing from the French national broadcasters. And he will include links to both the full performance, about 20 minutes, and a short 6-minute, all in French, piece with interviews with him. And basically it was his decision to take the song-written songs and take the core of that, but to basically change it and completely change the instrumentation and just how the songs were delivered from piano to pocket orchestra with interesting instruments like the organetto and things like this, and to have a very specifically more Celtic medievally feeling to it. And it's fascinating. I'm not saying it's a full success, but it was interesting to hear, at least give it the old college try. And Jared, I think, argued that might be the best version of Namarie that's been recorded out there, and I might agree. I think that was actually really well done. The other one we'll do is link it's another podcast, actually, not focused on Tolkien. It's by a UK podcaster, one of those people who got popular on TikTok, James Partridge, who apparently focuses on what's called school assembly music, which is kind of like, secular school hymn music, if you will, for post-war England is kind of a thing. In fact, there was a friend of mine complaining about school assembly music the other day and all that, so in his experience of it. So that was kind of interesting to get a thing. Anyway, he is an earnest young man in the best sort of way, from what I could tell. And he spent an episode concentrating on this and pulling in connections to the world of some of the school assembly songwriters and things like this, and talking about it. And in some cases doing, I would say, better performances of the songs than Swann and Elvin did on the official album. I'm not saying it doesn't make the songs any better, but there's one of those things like, I think I'd rather listen to this, including, it should be noted, Bilbo's last song, which is not on the album, because that wasn't on the album. So it's a way to hear a version of that in a piano-only context.
Day is ended in my eyes, but journey long before me lies. Farewell, friends, I hear the call, the ships beside the stormy wall.
We'll throw that in there, throw that out there, and if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. So those are my last thoughts. Oriana, what are your last thoughts, if anything, beyond a simple
There's a band I really love called the Oh Hellos, which they started like before there was the Nick Kroll, John Mulaney bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But they did an album called Dear Wormwood that was inspired by C.S. Lewis, and they don't listen to this podcast, but I would actually love to hear their take on Tolkien's poems. They did a Christmas album. They've got two of them now, but like their rearranging of traditional Christmas music is really good and interesting to me. And they did a version of the Gower Wassail on their like latest Christmas album that like really made me think that they would. I just kept wishing as I was listening to this like appalling vaudeville act. Like, oh man, I would love to hear what the Oh Hellos have to do with this. Yeah, onward and upward. My school had a song. It was a prep school, so that does, yeah.
There you go. And Jared, wrap it up. Any last thoughts?
I will say, in case nobody picked up on this, I think the book is absolutely worth looking at, both as an artistic object in its own right and for the essays. The music is so skippable. This is a horrible last thought. I'm so sorry to everybody. But listening to the recordings of Tolkien reading his poetry, I was like, okay, I can see why they wanted his son to do the reading.
Frankly.
Oh, God, we didn't really get to that. Yeah.
You tried, but you are going too fast and you are not. Oh, it was kind of stressful. So I think that it's cool to like hear it once, be like, yeah, that's how he sounded speaking his own languages or whatever. That's great. But I don't need to hear him talk again, like in terms like to hear him read again.
Yeah. Christopher did the better job. So that is very true. We'll leave it at that. Okay. All right, the choice of topic is here, and it's come around back to me. So, next month is our 7th anniversary, believe it or not. And we all know what comes up when it is the anniversary episodes. It's April Fool's time, and I usually pick things that result in threats or complaints from my co-hosts after I make them see or watch something that they find less than salubrious. Memories of Terry Brooks and Dennis McKiernan and other things in their heads. I won't be doing that here. And in fact, I will be doing something that I don't know if either of you know, although I suspect you both know about it. And I've been curious about this for the longest time because when we've been talking about all the adaptations over time, we've been talking about logically the English language ones, but there are other ones out there. And there are other ones I've been very, very curious about. And this one I've been curious about for the longest time. But I checked, and it's on the Internet Archive, and it's got full English subtitling. We are going to talk about the mid-90s Finnish adaptation of Tolkien, Hobbit.
Oh. Yes.
Yeah, so it's 9 episodes long, and everything about it sounds really interesting to me, and I really wanted to know what they did. We need to see it. We need to talk about it. So, and again, if you're listening, it's on the Internet Archive. You can find it. So, and thank goodness it is subtitled. Otherwise, it'd be like, no.
I was learning Finnish 7 years.
Yeah. Around the time that we started.
Yeah.
I remember,
I did not keep up with that. I went to Finland and used what I could and then came back and just kind of, so here we go.
There we go. Yeah, I was about to say, you maybe tell us more about the nuances or whatever and things like that.
Yeah. You're the toddler level.
Because you retain the nuances.
Yeah, of course.
Surely.
Yeah, even if you forget the vocabulary, you retain the nuance.
Training myself on, Moomin episodes was great for nuance.
that or Eurovision entries, which is my way of knowing Finnish more recently.
There we go.
So, and all that. And fine examples all. So, all right. So that'll be the case for next time. So, as always, we thank you so much for listening. We do appreciate it. Our page can be found at megaphonic.fm/by-the-bywater, along with our episode guide and more details besides, including, of course, the notes for this episode. You can contact us at bythebywater@gmail.com. You can also find the show, as well as the three of us individually, on Blue Sky, as well as various other spots and social media things out there and around, and things like that. And, of course, do consider joining the megaphonic.fm Patreon. We'd really appreciate it. That will allow you to join in our discussions and things like this, including we get more and more people who are joining in who are like listeners and because of the Tolkien stuff. And that is great. You can let us make fun of memes or create our own or talk about all sorts of weird, obscure things and much more besides. We'd always really appreciate it. In any event, thank you all again for listening. It has been great talking with you as always. We will see you next time. Until then.